welcome back to the Jet Press Podcast. My name is Justin Fried, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Mike Luciano. Mike, how you doing today, buddy? What's going on?
Well, it's that time of year because it's the time where it's 3 o'clock and I have to turn lights on in my apartment because it's getting that dark. So normally this is a very bleak time for the Jets, and this year is no different because they are going 14 consecutive years of not making the playoffs, which I don't know how you do that, and 9 consecutive years of failing to even have a 500 record, which I don't even know how you do that even more. That's where things are. Aaron Rodgers, all likelihood, is probably not going to be the quarterback next year. We will discuss other options for the quarterback room in 2025. We're going to talk about Olu Fashanu because he is starting to look like a number 11 pick, even though the number 13 pick appears to be a little bit better at this stage. We'll get into that. We'll also talk about some numbers that we found interesting from the last couple of Jets games. And if we have time, we'll talk about the Miami Dolphins. At this point, who cares about the games, because it's just slop, nauseating crap after another. It's just boom, boom, boom. The hits keep coming. They're probably going to be up at some point, and Aaron Rodgers is going to look good, and then he's going to suck, and then they're going to lose. We've seen this before. But before all that, thank you for tuning in. You can find us on all the podcast platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. And if you want to support the show on YouTube, there's 2 ways. The free way, which is subscribing and hitting the thumbs up like icon. And the 99-cent membership way, which gives you priority replies in the comments so we can get to them quicker and sooner. And you'll definitely be up on the screen.
Every dollar donated goes towards fixing my internet.
Yes, because Justin apparently lives in Siberia and cannot get a proper internet connection.
I hate Optimum. I hate them, and hopefully one day I will get my internet fixed. Could you see my cat, by the way, sleeping? He looks so cute.
I think I can see him too. Yeah, we got a special guest. And now a word from our sponsor, Optimum. Oh no!
Oh shit!
Moving on to actual Jets talk, I want to get to an article from Andy Vasquez of NJ.com because he ranked from least likely to most likely quarterback options for the Jets. Aaron Rodgers, of course, being one of them in terms of what are we going to see week 1 under center in 2025. So there are some names like Derek Carr is not on this list. Jalen Milroe is not on this list. And I think those are 2 realistic options the Jets need to at least consider, but they are not on this list. I want to kind of run down them in sort of inverse order and get your thoughts on, because 2 of them I really don't even think we really need to dignify with responses, and that's Sam Darnold and Jordan Travis. Sam Darnold is not going to come back to the Jets. It's not going to work with the Jets. He's going to be owed a ton of money because he's playing pretty well in Minnesota. That's not going to happen in Fantasyland. And I know guys like him from his college career, and I kind of feel bad for Jordan Travis, but we see this a lot where quarterbacks get picked in the 5th, 6th round. They're not designed to really, play. That's not what they're really trying to do. They just want depth. And Jordan Travis is a nice depth piece. Remember when the Jets took Taj Boyd from Clemson, and people were like, oh, we should play Taj Boyd because he had good college numbers. They just wanted a 2nd, 3rd string quarterback. They had no intention of ever playing Taj Boyd. And look what happened there. Jordan Travis, as good as he was in college, it's a shame that injury, man, because it probably cost him a round in the draft. It cost him the playoff. It cost him so much, but I just don't see any future in terms of being the starting quarterback for the Jets. Maybe he could end up being a backup, but then again, they'd probably have to get rid of Tyrod and sign somebody else, or hold on to him for a 3rd year as a 3rd string quarterback. That's a lot to ask. So those are the 2 completely unrealistic options, Travis and Darnold. Number 6, of course, is Aaron Rodgers. And
sure,
Justin, I think you and I have made our thoughts known that you can't bring Rodgers back.
No, first we'll talk about Travis and Darnold. I think Jordan Travis should not be on that list. That even proposing him as a possible starter in 2025 was wild to me. The Jets did not draft Jordan Travis to be their long-term future starting quarterback. They never expected that when they drafted him. I don't think that's remotely in the plans. Sure, if it would ever happen, amazing, great. I mean, the 49ers didn't draft Brock Purdy to be their starting quarterback, and look what happened. But 99% of the time when you're drafting a quarterback on day 3, especially 5th, 6th round, you are not expecting that quarterback to develop into a starter. You're hoping in a perfect world that quarterback, or at least in a realistic world, that quarterback develops into a long-term backup. The plan was when the Jets drafted Jordan Travis that he could eventually maybe take over for Tyrod Taylor as the backup quarterback in New York. And if that happens, now you have a long-term backup on a rookie contract, which is a valuable commodity in the NFL. That's why I can't imagine any scenario where Jordan Travis is seen as a genuine contender to start in 2025, especially if to throw in the fact that the Jets expected him to be ready, maybe not by the beginning of training camp, but by sometime this summer. That was the initial expectation when they drafted him. Obviously, that wasn't the case. And now it sounds like he's not going to be ready at all this year. Not only obviously not ready to play. When I say ready, I mean ready to at least take practice reps and at least see what he can do on a football field. The first time the Jets are going to see Jordan Travis on a football field in a Jets jersey is going to be OTAs next year. That they're not going to have any information about him other than their pre-draft analysis, which was going to be done by a previous regime. Like, there is no potential to Jordan Travis. There is a much higher chance that Jordan Travis is not on the active roster in week 1 than he is even considered a viable starting candidate in 2025. So yeah, I know Jets fans want there to be something with Jordan Travis, and maybe there is. Maybe he shows something in the spring and the summer. I don't know. But right now, he's nothing more than a lottery ticket. Sam Darnold, I think there's at least an outside chance that the organization would consider that. A lot of it, again, depends on what the next regime looks like, who the head coach is, who the front office, which hires they make in the front office, who the GM is. But I think from Sam Darnold's perspective, you touched on it, Mike, I think he'll have landing spots that he would probably prefer. If the Minnesota does not bring him back, there's probably going to be other teams that he would rather go to than the Jets. I don't know if there's still hard feelings. It'll be a different regime and everything, but I don't know. I don't think that is the most likely option. If he is open to it, Mike, I want to get your thoughts on that really quick before we move on to Rodgers. If Sam Darnold's willing to do it, say I don't even know what a reasonable contract looks like for him at this point, but say it's a relatively reasonable contract.
It's probably going to be close to $40 million, is it not?
It's going to be similar to the Daniel Jones deal, I imagine. Which, that's the going rate for a quarterback that has had the year that Darnold has had, which is
how well did that work out?
It didn't. I will say, though, I do think Darnold's 2024 is better than Jones' 2021. I think that was the year before he got signed. I do think he's been better than Jones was in 2021. But again, you have to be wary of it. Like, all right, Jones was propped up by his situation. Brian Daboll coached out of his mind to get Daniel Jones to look like that. I think Sam Darnold's really been aided by Kevin O'Connell and a really good coaching staff. And obviously he has Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and now TJ Hawkinson's back to throw to. So that's definitely helped his situation. But Darnold's look good. So would you have any interest at all in Sam Darnold in 2025? No, none.
With what this team needs, with the direction they're going, I'm not paying $120 million over 3 years for Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
Who looks pretty good now, but I mean, look at the situation. That's as easy mode as it could get right now for a quarterback when everybody's healthy. Maybe San Francisco, if everybody was healthier.
Sure.
But that is complete easy mode. And him coming to, the Jets' general vibe and Morgan Moses and Alan Lazard, and it's just not gonna work. I want to get to a comment from Marcelo Cabrera really quick, though.
Sure.
What do you think of Justin Fields? I want to get to that because Fields was number 2 on this guy's list,
which
in
is
terms
crazy.
of likeliness. Fields is the weird thing, though, about this is because we'll get to Ward and Sanders later. Milroe is not on this list, Jalen Milroe, who's widely regarded as the 3rd best quarterback in this class. If the Jets like Jalen Milroe, I would just take Jalen Milroe because Justin Fields is kind of what I think Jalen Milroe is going to be in the pros. I will say, though, because the thing with Fields is he is a supreme top 5 in the league quarterback in terms of athleticism. In terms of just how he can move, how he can make plays, big, strong guy. He's got a huge arm. Like, physically, there's everything you could want for a quarterback. The problems that he had were he just didn't process things quick enough. Everything always took a while. He's holding the ball. He was the only quarterback who I think got sacked at a higher rate than Zach Wilson did last year when Zach Wilson was in the game. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be a problem of his. The optimistic thing is, if you look at Pittsburgh, their situation right now, he played, I thought, pretty well in those first 4 or 5 games that Russell Wilson. Like, one of the better stretches of his career. obviously Wilson, I think, is better, and Wilson has proven to be better for a Steelers team that might make some noise in the playoffs. I think they'll bring Wilson back as he's a free agent, but I also think Fields maybe has probably played himself out of I'm a backup forever kind of territory. I think he's shown enough there. So I think there's a chance if you don't want to just run it back with Tyrod Taylor or whoever as your quarterback, I would not hate of the veterans out there. I would not hate going for Fields because I think he has the most upside.
Fields makes sense to me if you are not in position to draft a top quarterback and you want to bring in somebody on the free agent market with genuine upside. You don't want to just run it back with Tyrod, or you don't want to roll out Jameis Winston or Jacoby Brissett or even a Derek Carr like that. It makes sense to me if that's the route you want to take, because with Fields, there still is upside. I agree. I think I was a fairly decent doubter of Justin Fields given what he did in Chicago. But he showed signs of growth with Pittsburgh this year, and I thought he was playing some of the best ball of his career. Unfortunately, they have Russell Wilson, who's now playing excellent. He's turned back the clock.
Just for reference, Fields this year in 6 starts, he went 4-2, completed 65% of his passes, which is his career high. 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, and then he also ran for about 280-ish yards and 5 more touchdowns.
Yeah, he was balling. He was playing
10
well.
touchdowns in 6 games, and he played some tough defenses in there too. He played Denver, played the Chargers, like real teams.
I think if you are going to bring in Justin Fields, you're probably not drafting a quarterback, at least in the first couple of rounds. I mean, I don't know if it's even worth it taking another mid-round quarterback when you already have one mid-round developmental quarterback on your roster. So I don't think they would draft a quarterback if they bring in Fields, because say you bring in Justin Fields, you sign him to, it'll probably end up being like a 2-year deal. That would be my guess, is probably what he's going to get. Some kind of like prove it fringe starter deal where it's like the Sam Darnold-ish contract where it's like, hey, look, you can earn, you earn yourself some future money if you prove that you can be a starter, but we're not going to give you that right now because you haven't proven that yet. I don't think they're going to sign Justin Fields to a contract like that and then draft a Jalen Milroe, 8th overall or wherever the Jets end up picking. While I do think Milroe would be best served sitting behind somebody to start his career, I think you're muddying the waters a little bit when you bring in someone like Justin Fields to compete with a rookie, because Fields, well, sure, he's a veteran option. He's young and he has upside, and there will be, the fan base will latch on to him in a way that would be very funny considering how much I think Jets fans kind of trashed Justin Fields around the time of that 2021 draft when the Jets didn't take him. And it became like a Zach Wilson versus Justin Fields debate. Now it'd be like, oh, wait, Fields is actually our guy. We got to ride.
I would argue he's been the second best quarterback in that class, or whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I guess
Lawrence is the best, and then
behind T-Law. Yeah, well, I mean, who else? It's not going to be Mac Jones. Like, yeah, it's wholly disappointing class, given all the hype around it. And definitely not
this year's class is what that year was supposed to be.
Yeah,
like they're all good.
Yes, every one of them has looked good. Every one of the top 4s look really good. But yeah, I Fields. I'm okay with Fields, and if you want to at least have some intrigue about 2025, if the Jets pick 10th overall, right? Because you and I both know the Jets. They're going to win 1 or 2 of these meaningless December games, and there's a lot of bad teams right now. There are, I think, 8 teams with 3 or fewer wins.
So they play the Dolphins twice and the Jaguars.
Right. If they win all 3 of those games, you can kiss a top 10 pick goodbye. They're probably picking 12th or something like that if they do that. And so at that point, you're not going to get, obviously, Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. You might not even get a Jalen Milroe. Who knows where he might go at that point. It's too early to say. It's still December. A lot can change from now until April. But if they're out of the range for a top quarterback and you don't want to just be boring and run it back with Tyrod Taylor or bring in a veteran stopgap like Jacoby Brissett or whoever, someone that you're not going to win a lot of games with, Fields makes a lot of sense to me.
Jeff, 3rd round for Max Brosmer. That is way too high for Max Brosmer.
Ooh,
he's like a 6th round pick.
I've not even watched him enough. I can't comment.
He's looked okay, but he's like a Jordan Travis. He was at New Hampshire last year. I'm not picking him on day 2. Fields would also be the best option because I know every year we always say that, the best quarterback class in history is next year's. Everyone always says, oh, next year they got some really good guys. Like every year they say that. But I think it's really true this year because there's just 2 guys it's like 2015 with Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, where there were 2 guys at the top and then just like nothing for a while. Probably a little better than that. But if you want to just punt on this class and say, no matter what Fields does, we're probably going to look again in 2026. Then I think Drew Aller will go back. I think he'll be in 2026. Then you get Arch Manning and guys like that. I think that this might be the best option out there just because you go in almost with house money. Because if Fields doesn't work, well, we're going to take our guy anyway. And we kind of knew that going in that he's a risk. And if he works, then he works. Then he's Darnold in Minnesota. He's Baker in Tampa Bay.
Right.
Sometimes you need that change of scenery.
It comes down to what the next regime is going to want to do. And it really comes down to, like, I think there's a good chance they do pass on a quarterback because you're bringing in a new GM and a new head coach at the same time. The understanding is that they will get 3-4 years. I mean, at least given the way that Woody Johnson has recently operated, he's given regimes a lot of time. He's given coaches and especially GMs a lot of time to figure it out. I mean, Joe Douglas got 6 years. This was his 6th year with the organization, and he was still employed going into the year. Like Woody Johnson has given them time. So I think they could look at this quarterback class, the new regime could look at this class and say, look, we don't have to make a pick right now. We can run it with Fields. We can go in there with, Derek Carr or whoever, and then draft our quarterback next year. I don't think there's an immediate pressure to get a rookie quarterback in the building right now if the scenario isn't there. If the scenario is there and they like a guy at a pick they're going to pick, or they like a guy enough that they want to move up, they don't have a ton of draft capital to do that, they can do that. I just don't think they'll be pressured to do it. Now, the downside of that is you have a lot of young talent on the roster right now, be it Sauce Gardner, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, etc. The longer you wait, you're kind of pushing that window 1 year back into the future. And as a result, those guys are going to have to get extended. Those guys are going to have to get contracts. So your window is going to be off a little bit. Ideally, you'd rather have that rookie quarterback growing with your young talent. But unfortunately, we've reached a point where those young guys are about to get paid. And so you won't really be able to make any more external additions. The big money contracts you'll have are a lot of your external or your internal guys, be it Sauce Gardner, Breece Hall, etc. And that's how you'll be able to capitalize on that rookie quarterback contract, as opposed to building around your young guys and then being able to make veteran additions. The veteran additions will just be on the roster already.
John Mundock, this is a decent roster. We should be competitive in 2 years, IMO. They should be competitive now.
Yeah, they should be.
Because it's a good roster. That's the riddle of this whole year. They should be competitive now.
Like even with Rodgers being right now, I think the 23rd, 24th best quarterback in the league. I mean, earlier in the year, I was saying he was probably still hovering around 15, 16, 17. I don't think he's at that point anymore. Even with him being like 22nd, 23rd, they should be better than 3 wins. Like I don't.
Zach Wilson was like in the 40s.
Right. I mean, obviously, this team is worse than they were last year. The defense has just been worse in general. But even still, they should be better than 3 wins. I don't think they're a playoff team with Rodgers playing like this, but they should be better. And so as long as you get, again, and we'll say it again for another year, bring in league average quarterback play, and this roster is a playoff contender. Bring in above average quarterback play. Now we're talking about making an actual playoff run, assuming all things stay the same with, the defense. It doesn't regress even further, and the offensive line doesn't regress, because the offensive line has been quality. And we'll talk about that a little bit later.
What do you think about Jameis? Because he's number 4 on the list.
I think Jameis Winston is exactly who he is at this stage. You know exactly what you are getting. You are getting a quarterback that can absolutely win you some games. And that's what makes him one of the best backups in the league and a fringe starter for a lot of teams. Unfortunately, he's also a quarterback that can lose you a lot of games. He is maybe the most volatile quarterback in the NFL. He's fun, I guess. He's a fun guy to watch and to watch play football. But obviously, you're not going to win 10 games with Jameis Winston as your quarterback in 2025, barring any kind of unexpected Geno Smith-like late career resurgence or just breakout from him. You're getting a guy who's going to throw probably 25 touchdowns, but also probably 20 interceptions. And it's going to be frustrating, but he's a fine fringe stopgap, I guess, if you're not drafting like a Cam Ward or a Shedeur Sanders. I wouldn't hate Jalen Milroe developing behind Jameis, I guess. But if you're doing that, you might as well just stick with Tyrod. I think Jameis is better than Tyrod, but Tyrod's probably...
Right now, this year, do the Jets have more wins with Aaron Rodgers or Jameis?
Probably Jameis.
And you are going to get the picks, but you're also going to get 4,000 yards and 25 touchdowns.
Sure.
And Cleveland's offense, Cleveland looked dead as anything with Deshaun Watson. Jameis at least has a pulse. they're cooking now. That's the problem, though. I think eventually, just because of the Watson everything, I feel like the Browns are probably just going to bring Winston back. I don't know what the whole starter backup thing is going to be because they got that contract. I mean, we think the Jets have bad, salary cap studs and nothing like that. I think they'll make a really strong push to bring him back. But I mean, if you're looking at because Carr right now, it'd have to be like either a trade or you have to hope the Saints cut him and he gives money back. Like, there's avenues out there in terms of proven. If we don't want to count Fields as a veteran, which is fine because he's still a younger guy, I think Jameis might be the best veteran that's reasonable out there.
Sure.
Like, I don't think he's that far away from Darnold, to be perfectly honest.
I think that's a decent take. I don't think he's that far off from Darnold. I think he's worse than Darnold. I don't think he's that far off. John brings
but like it's not like Darnold's in the top 10 and Jameis is in the low 20s. I think,
I agree. John brings up a good point here, and I think this is going to be an important conversation when we're talking about the Jets quarterback plans. John says we're going to eat $50 million when AR leaves, so it's going to be on the cheap. If they designate him as a post-June 1st cut, they can cut that down from 50 to I think like 20 something, and then it's spread out between, I believe, 2025 and 2026. I don't know if they'll do that because the new next regime might come in and say, hey, let's just rip off the Band-Aid. Let's just say, hey, we're probably not going to compete this year. Let's take our medicine right now. Let's eat all that dead money in 2025 and then move on in 2026. Or they could designate him as that post-June 1st cut. Now, if they do that, though, it's important to remember, while, yes, they do mitigate the cap hit, they don't free up that cap space, I believe, until after June 1st.
Yeah.
So while he becomes a free agent, he could sign with anybody at that time. They don't free up that cap space until later. So,
and if he retires, I think it's the $50 million then, if he just retires?
I think there's a way that they can split it between 2025 and 2026 too, but I'm not positive. I'm sure there's a way to actually to mitigate the cap hit.
Yeah. So retiring would be worse financially for the Jets if he just retires.
Possibly. But either way, the point is they're going to have to go cheap. Either way, they're going to be paying Aaron Rodgers a lot of money in 2025, and he's going to take up a good portion of their salary cap space. I don't think Woody and I don't think that the new regime are going to want to spend on a Sam Darnold, right, where you might have to pay him $40 million. It seems unlikely, depending on what Derek Carr's contract situation would be, if he were to slip free from New Orleans, that the Jets would want to pay, especially if he's paid, on the same contract he is with the Saints. If they were to cut him, and then maybe he takes less because he's already making a lot of money from New Orleans, maybe I can see that being a possibility. But they're probably going to go pretty cheap, and so maybe that's a Jameis, maybe it's a Tyrod. Regardless, I think it makes sense to me if your options are between signing Jameis and maybe cutting Tyrod Taylor or, keeping him as a backup, or just running it back with Tyrod and whoever, if it's a rookie or whatever. I think Tyrod makes more sense as the stopgap just because you're already paying him and he's already under contract in 2025, and releasing him, you would take on more dead cap to just sign someone else who, how much better is Jameis Winston than Tyrod Taylor? He's better. I think he's a better quarterback. I don't think he's a significant tier above. So I don't know. I think the finances, though, will play a big factor here.
Brian Sternbeck, retirement would be the same as a release. So,
yeah, they could. That's what I was saying. They can designate the retirement. I think they could designate a retirement as post June 1st transaction. Like he can retire after June 1st, so they can mitigate the cap hit that way. Yeah.
Let's talk about the rookies because number 3 and 5 on their list, we haven't got to 1 yet. 3 and 5 respectively are Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. Sure. Now, the problem with these is I think if the Jets were worse, if the Jets had 2 wins, I feel if they lost that Texans game, I feel like these guys might be 1 and 2 because they'd be in a position to get him. I feel like the only reason they're lower on this list is because the Jets, I don't think are going to be worse than the Giants. I don't think are going to be worse than the Raiders. So I think they're probably going to end up, I don't know who gets who, but I feel like that's kind of where they end up going. But if the Jets somehow end up in that situation where they could take either of them, if they hire you as GM, Justin, they get the number 1 pick. Who the hell knows? They get number 1.
Oh, man.
Are you taking Cam? Probably Travis Hunter. Let's say they don't pick Travis Hunter.
Sure.
Are you taking Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders?
I can't give you a full answer right now. It's December. I haven't done all I feel like in recent years, especially. I'll preliminarily say Cam Ward. Very preliminary. I like Cam Ward more than Shedeur Sanders from what I've seen so far. But I do most of my draft stuff from January to April. So I can't fully say that. You've done more draft research at this time than I have, but from what I've seen, I like Cam Ward. I think he they both have similar upsides in the NFL. I like Cam Ward's. I mean, they're honestly in some ways, in some respects, they're similar-ish prospects. But I like Cam Ward's upside. I like his playmaking ability, his arm talent. I think he's an excellent quarterback prospect. I like Shedeur Sanders as well, but I don't know. I can't. This is not my firm answer. I will give you a firm answer in March or April. I can't do that.
All right, here are some cold hard truths then.
Sure.
Cam Ward's got the stronger arm. Cam Ward is more mobile. Cam Ward is a little thicker. He's probably got 20 pounds on.
I feel like I've seen Sanders doesn't run as much as Ward, but he's not immobile. Like, I guess he's got more.
He is more accurate. Shedeur is more accurate. He's got probably a better processing brain, which, I mean, his dad was Deion Sanders. I assume he knows football. I assume that he can figure out football. And he's more accurate, and I like him on deep balls.
Sure.
A little bit. It really is, honestly, at this point, kind of an eye of the beholder thing. Like, what do you value more? Like the raw it's probably going to be like a finished product versus upside.
Sure.
Kind of thing where, you get I know this didn't really work out the right way, but the finished product was Bryce Young, the upside was Stroud, and then upside ended up winning. And sometimes it's the other way around because Trevor Lawrence was the finished product and Zach Wilson was the upside guy.
And Stroud looked like a finished product his rookie year as much as any rookie quarterback. So you never know.
John Mundock, Coach Primetime, trade up and get his boy.
Oh, boy.
Moving up, burning more capital to move up, though.
Oh, yeah, he's saying bring in Deion Sanders as well as the head coach.
All right, yeah. Deion has said, though, like, Deion only wants to coach college. So
yeah, and look, we just had one quarterback who was here as a nepo hire, or was hiring coaches on nepotism purposes. It'd be kind of the same if they were like, hey, we're going to draft Shedeur, so that it'd be the other way around. Obviously, they'd hire Deion first. But also, if
Pat Shermer as OC.
If they hire Deion in January, like, logistically, how does this work? If they hire Deion as the head coach in January, how in the world are they ensuring that Shedeur is their quarterback? Because Shedeur could go first overall for all we know. Like, he could go for the first pick. You're going to trade up to the first overall pick to make sure that you get Shedeur Sanders. That team, whatever team has that pick, is going to require a ransom for you to trade up that far.
And plus, if Deion's serious about, like, he's not going to certain situations, like, what if he's the coach of one team? He can say, I don't want him on this team. Like,
that's not how it works.
Are you allowed to do that?
John, you said it's a hot post. I know. I've seen other people propose that seriously, though. So I wanted.
People are talking about. I've heard more about Rex Ryan coming back to the Jets than any other coach. So why can't they hire? If they could consider Rex Ryan, why can't they consider Deion? Would be a better hire than Rex Ryan.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
So, I mean,
I don't even think Deion is inherently a terrible hire necessarily. I think it'd be. Look, I think it'd be good for content. It'd be good for our job.
It'd be out of the box, certainly, but in the boxes hurt the Jets, so who knows? And the number one on this list, we'll wrap it up, is Tyrod. And I feel like that's because he's going to be on the team no matter what next year, because no matter what they do, if they go for it again with a veteran, he's a solid backup. If they want to just, take it on the chin for a year, and then 2026 is when they really start making a push. He's a good veteran stopgap, almost an ideal veteran stopgap. Smart guy, doesn't turn the ball over, makes plays with his legs, like the kind of guy you dream about. Been around a bunch of different leagues, picks up an offense quickly, a bunch of different teams, Even if I think what's going to happen, because they're not going to be in Ward or Sanders' range, and Ward and Sanders, I think, could be day one starters. I think Jalen Milroe is not. I feel like what could happen, or I think what might happen, is they're going to end up taking Milroe, and then maybe he starts for half the year, Tyrod does, and then they eventually move Milroe. I don't think he's ready to start day one. He's the traits guy this year. So I think that's probably what's going to end up happening.
If they're in a range to draft Jalen Milroe, that might be right now, like December 4th. I might say that that's my ideal plan. Assuming that they don't have a shot at Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. Drafting Jalen Milroe and having him develop behind Tyrod Taylor. Knowing Tyrod's history, he'll get hurt in some wacky, weird way. He'll fall down the stairs or something like that at some point in his rookie year. And then Jalen Milroe will be asked to step in and he'll start. But I could see that being a good scenario for the Jets is bringing back Tyrod, drafting Jalen Milroe, having him develop behind him. That makes sense to me, and that's probably what I think my preference would be right now. It also seems like the most likely scenario as well. Manish Metasburn and Ryan said, as a former number 2 overall pick that will be a free agent this offseason, or after this season, that the Jets should consider bringing in to compete for the starting job. I don't know. I don't think we mentioned that guy's name anymore, right, Mike? I don't think we talk about who this is probably referring to.
Well, it might be a guy in Denver who is worse than 2 other people.
Wait, but it also could be Marcus Mariota, right?
It'll be Marcus Mariota. You know what? He looked okay for Washington.
I believe Marcus Mariota is former number 2 overall pick, who is going to be a free agent this offseason. Sure.
So
yeah, there it is. Yeah, his name is Marcus.
There we go. Yeah,
exactly.
One pick the Jets did make was Olu Fashanu. It took him 11th overall, up to a lot more ranker than I thought there would be, because we heard O-line for years and years and years, and they take an O-lineman. Why didn't you take Brock Bowers? Fashanu lately has been pretty good. He didn't allow a single pressure against Seattle in 42 snaps. Certainly looks much better at left tackle than right tackle or right guard. How could he not? He played left tackle exclusively at Penn State, and then they move him around to right tackle, right guard. That doesn't make any sense to do that in the pros. That's where you're going to learn new footwork and timing and everything like that. Looking at this pick now, though, I still have some reservations about it. Not because Bowers is good, because I think you have to weigh guys. Like, I don't think, Caleb Williams or Drake May has been an A quarterback this year, but that's probably an A pick for both teams because of how he's performing relative to his position. So I would rather take an above-average O-lineman over a great tight end. However, I think Bowers, with how he's been, he's breaking wide receiver rookie catch records as a tight end. He might be a top 3 tight end in the league now, like right now.
I think he is.
With quarterbacks that are worse than what the Jets have, I would argue.
Yeah.
So because of that, I feel like it's trending a little bit towards Ken O'Brien, Dan Marino territory, where Ken O'Brien's a good quarterback. In a vacuum, you pick a guy who's a starter for 9 years and made a couple Pro Bowls, but you had the opportunity to pick a guy like Dan Marino, or in this case Brock Bowers, and they whiffed on it. And Fashanu, as good as he's looked, I think he needs like a couple more games before I start to get that thought out of my head, because Bowers being this good this quickly has kind of scared me.
Sure. I think if Olu Fashanu develops into a Pro Bowl left tackle, regardless of what Brock Bowers does in his career, it was the correct decision. Brock Bowers could be, if he's the best tight end of all time, maybe not. I don't know. But if he is an all-pro tight end and you have a great left tackle, you made the right decision with Olu Fashanu. Even if Brock Bowers is the best tight end in the NFL and Olu Fashanu is a top 7 left tackle in the NFL, I think you probably still made the correct decision with positional value taken into account. But yeah, man, seeing what Brock Bowers is doing this year, he leads the NFL. Every player. He leads all players in catches, and he's only played 12 games. There are guys who have played 13 games. He leads every player in catches with 84.
As a rookie tight end.
He has 5 more catches than anyone else in the NFL. He's also 4th in catches. Really should be 3rd because Terry McLaurin has played 1 more game and has 12 more yards than him. The only guys besides Terry who have more catches or more yards, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Again, this is a rookie tight end. Brock Bowers is doing things that we've never seen any rookie tight end do. He is on pace, I believe, to have the best season of any rookie tight end in NFL history. So, yeah, looking at that, it's hard to be like, oh, man, the Jets right now made the correct decision. But I have been encouraged by what we've seen from Olu Fashanu over the last few games. Now that he's stepped in, he's had 2.5 games at left tackle since filling in for Tyron Smith, who is on IR, likely will not play another game for the Jets, possibly in his career. Over the last 3 weeks since Fashanu started taking over at left tackle, he is a 77.5 PFF pass block grade. He's allowed only 3 pressures and 1 sack. That grade ranks 16th among all qualified tackles over the last 3 weeks. Not just tackles, just all qualified tackles. He's been good. He's playing well at left tackle. Last week was his worst run blocking grade of the 3, but the first 2 weeks before that, he was grading out well as a run blocker as well. There's been such a stark difference between watching him play at left tackle versus right tackle, and obviously, especially right guard, a position he had literally never played before. You're seeing the vision with Olu Fashanu now. You're seeing why the Jets drafted him. And if he can be your long-term starter at left tackle, and he is an above average to great starting left tackle, I don't want to say I don't care what Brock Bowers is doing, because sure, if he's the best tight end of all time, yeah, I wish the Jets made that pick, but it hurts a lot less if Olu Fashanu works out. And right now, he's playing very well.
I get what you're saying. If he becomes, let's say, 80% of DeBrickashaw Ferguson,
even DeBrickashaw Ferguson, because DeBrickashaw, I don't think Ferguson ever made a Pro Bowl.
He made 3.
Oh, then he didn't make an All-Pro. He didn't make an All-Pro.
He didn't make an All-Pro, but let's just say he becomes like 80-90% of that. But then Bowers, like, you don't want to put these tags on guys too early in their career. But I mean, when you're getting 100 catches as a rookie tight end with horrible quarterback playing a 2-win team, your mind naturally goes there.
Sure.
Like if he's that level of good, like Jerry Rice went 16th overall. There were a lot of great players picked before him. I'm sure a lot of guys are saying, "Man, why did we get Jerry Rice?"
Yeah,
like, I feel like those thoughts are gonna creep in. Now, again, Fashanu's a lot better than some of the other offensive line picks, which I find. I wrote about this on Jet Press the other day. It's kind of a cruel irony that for years one of the big problems with Joe Douglas, he had 2 big problems. He couldn't get quarterback. He couldn't get the offensive line. He finally gets one, and it's way too little, too late. Because he's not going to be able to realize, like, even if you take Tyron out, Fashanu, John Simpson, Joe Tippmann, Elijah Vera-Tucker, Morgan Moses, that's a hell of a unit.
Yeah.
Which that baffles me too. Like, I see people defending Rodgers. Oh, it's the offensive line. Like, I don't even get what you're talking about anymore. He throws the ball quick. They protect him well. Like, I have no complaints with the offensive line this year. Least of all Fashanu. It just sucks that it came at the cost of Brock Bowers to get this. Because I don't know how many there are going to be a lot of other Fashanus in this draft and the next. I don't know how many more Bowers are coming down the pike.
I think it ultimately comes down to this, right? Even if Brock Bowers becomes the better player over Olu Fashanu, maybe he would have been the better pick. I don't think I'm going to lose any sleep over it if Olu Fashanu is a really good player. If Olu Fashanu is 80% of DeBrickashaw Ferguson, first of all, I think he can be 100% of DeBrickashaw Ferguson. I think he can absolutely be a Pro Bowl left tackle, and there's shades of Fashanu's game. Ferguson was one of the pro comps for Fashanu coming out of college. So I think there's a very realistic chance that he becomes a DeBrickashaw Ferguson. He becomes a 10-year starter and a 3-time Pro Bowler. I think that's very realistic. But even if he doesn't, even if he's a really good player and he's 80% of them, like, it's like looking back at like other draft classes. Sure, would teams that didn't draft Patrick Mahomes wish they drafted him? Absolutely. The Browns could have used a quarterback that year. They drafted Myles Garrett. I don't think they're mad that they drafted Myles Garrett and not Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, I'm not saying Olu Fashanu is going to be the same caliber of player as Myles Garrett, but we're comparing, maybe the best edge rusher in football and one of the best edge rushers to probably the best quarterback of all time, one of the best for sure. The Browns, the better pick would have been Patrick Mahomes, but that isn't to say that I don't think any single Browns fan is looking at that draft and saying, man, I wish we drafted Mahomes first overall, like instead of Myles Garrett, right? Or even like the Justin Jefferson draft. There were plenty of, I don't know. Can I think of an All-Pro? Tristan Wirfs.
Or Jalen Reagor, but that was like a bad pick.
No. Well, I'm not even talking because that's a bust. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm like saying like a Tristan Wirfs or whoever, right? Maybe Olu Fashanu. If Olu Fashanu becomes a Tristan Wirfs, that is outstanding. Tristan Wirfs.
Do the Broncos regret not taking Jerry Jeudy over Justin Jefferson? Do the Falcons regret AJ Terrell over Justin Jefferson?
The Falcons, I think, is a good one there. I think the Falcons is a good because yes, the Broncos obviously regret taking a worse player at the same position over that. You could even say the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb isn't as good as Justin Jefferson, in my opinion. I think Justin Jefferson's a better one.
Yeah, but they're both all pro. Like, what do you?
They're both all pro. Or I honestly look at like the Panthers. They took Derek Brown in that draft, right? Derek Brown's a phenomenal player. Sure. Would it have been better for them to have taken Justin Jefferson sixth? This is completely hypothetical. Justin Jefferson was never going sixth overall, obviously. But would it have been better for them to do that? Yeah, in theory. I don't think Panthers fans are losing their sleep over drafting Derek Brown, who is a phenomenal player.
I don't think Jets fans are necessary. I guess because Marino went to Miami too, and that exacerbated it. But
that was
the Ken O'Brien comps are kind of.
Well, but it's the same position. That's different. If it's same position, that is a different conversation because they literally drafted a same player at the same position and said, hey, this guy is a better quarterback than this guy. And they were very wrong. In this case, they might have very much liked Bowers, but they're like, hey, look, tight end isn't as valuable as left tackle. Even if this guy is a great tight end, if we can get a great left tackle instead, that's better. So I think the position value is important. It needs to be taken into account.
Marcelo Cabrera, we had Becton. It was painful to watch him on the O-line. And what do you know? He's unbelievable with the Eagle.
We'll always have those first 12 games of Mekhi Becton where he looked very good. and then injuries.
And then he got hurt and fat and complained and angry. And he got hurt because of fat. Like, let's call a spade here. I mean, like,
and he got fat because of hurt. Like, I think that also played a factor. You're mean to Mekhi Becton. I get it.
He's mean to Jets fans.
I get it. I understand.
So why not?
I understand.
Jeff Chris trivia time, Justin.
Oh, yeah?
Do you know why DeBrickashaw Ferguson is called DeBrickashaw?
Is that not his name? Is that not his real name?
That's his first name. That's his legal first name.
Yeah, okay. Or you're asking, like, why he was named that? Why his parents named that? I feel like I've actually read this, but I don't remember why. Why would happen?
His name was inspired by Father Ralph DeBrickasart, a character in the 1977 novel The Thornbirds.
Okay, I never read that. I don't know
what. I did not expect that, honestly.
I don't even know I don't know what that is. I don't know what words.
Yeah, it's a book.
Cool.
Seems like a book you would read in like your freshman year of English class.
Sure.
Moving on, Justin. We got
stats. Is it time? Mike, is it time? We had the Woodies
for stats.
We had the Woodies last week, right? Was the Woodies last week? We did our award show.
Real competitive race it was this year.
Yeah, we had a thrilling Woodies last week, but now this week, the return of the GGSM, this gangrene stat machine. And while we're on the subject of the offensive line, let's start by talking about it, because not only has Olu Fashanu been impressive the last few weeks, let's talk about the interior of the Jets offensive line, because Joe Tippmann has been great. And I kind of want to combine a couple of stats here. First, we'll talk about Joe Tippmann. Tippmann is PFF's sixth highest rated center this year among all qualifiers in 2024. His 76.1 run block rate is sixth best. He's allowed only 13 pressures and has just been penalized one time this year. This is a breakout year for Joe Tippmann. And I said this going into the year. I want to say that I'm happy to say I was right about this, because I was wrong about John Simpson, but I was right about Joe Tippmann in saying that I think there was a chance. I said this back in August. I thought there was a chance that he might be the Jets' best offensive lineman by the end of the year. I said it'd be him or Tyron Smith probably. Well, in reality, it's actually been him or John Simpson, it seems. Tippmann has been excellent. He's been really, really good, especially when you compare him to another guy who was drafted in that class, John Michael Schmitz, who a lot of Jets fans wanted John Michael Schmitz over Joe Tippmann. And I think there were a lot of people who thought he was the consensus better center than Joe Tippmann. Joe Douglas went with Joe Tippmann. And unfortunately, it didn't save him his job, but I think it did land the Jets a long-term starting center. I don't know if he's ever going to take that Nick Mangold leap and be a Pro Bowl, all-pro center, but right now he's starting at a very high level in just his second year. He's been excellent. And if we're talking as well about the guards, because the interior of the Jets offensive line has honestly been good this year. It's been good. And the offensive line, we mentioned it before, has not been bad by any means. I think it took them a few weeks to finally get going, but since Elijah Vera Tucker has come back, the offensive line has been a strength of this Jets offense. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has not been able to take advantage of it, but there's a reason Breece Hall has been averaging over 5 yards per carry over the last 5 weeks. The offensive line is a big part of that. The Jets have 2 of the 16 highest graded guards by PFF this year. John Simpson, 81.8 PFF grade. That ranks 5th among all qualified guards. And Elijah Vera Tucker, I feel like Jets fans have been down on him because of the injuries in the past. He's been mostly healthy this year. He's missed 2 games due to an ankle injury. I don't think it's been another injury-riddled season for him, and he's played well when he's been out there. He ranks 16th among qualified guards. He also is tied for the 5th fewest pressures allowed amongst all guards. Combining Simpson, Vera Tucker, and Tippmann, the Jets have one of the better interior offensive lines in the NFL, and it's something that we have not been able to appreciate because the rest of the team stinks and the offense sucks and the quarterback isn't very good. But there are a lot of building blocks on that offensive line moving into 2025. And while, it starts with Olu Fashanu, it continues with the interior of this unit as well.
I've been kind of scarred by D. Milliner in terms of drafting guys from an Alabama cornerback or guys where every single other Alabama cornerback is good except him. When I heard Wisconsin interior offensive line, part of me is like, oh, this is going to be like that where every single Wisconsin lineman seems to work out. They're all big. They're all strong. They all do well in zone and man scheme. It's an offensive line factory. When they had Paul Chryst there. I don't know about now because now they're doing all air raid stuff and it's not working. But when they had Paul Chryst, they were one of the best developers of offensive line talent. Them in Iowa. It always seemed like Iowa had good ones too.
Yep.
And I was afraid the Jets were going to be the guy that takes the one Wisconsin lineman who doesn't work, and he's been not only good but great at points. Yeah. And this is a guy, I mean, I know Aaron Rodgers is calling out a lot of the pre-snap stuff, but to handle pre-snap stuff as a rookie, like he's last year and then to do it this year again, like I have no complaints about Joe Tippmann. John Simpson, better than I thought he'd be. Like, we thought that Simpson would be one of the worst guys on the line. He might be the best in terms of just pure performance this year. I mean, he's been fantastic. I really thought the moment that was going to turn the season around was John Simpson shoving that guy in the Patriots game. I'm like, man, this feels different. It did feel different. It just didn't end up being any different.
Well, I know. Same old Jets, man. They're dead, right?
Yeah. But by you, not me. So let's talk about another first-round pick of the Jets. Guy named Will McDonald, because he took a lot of crap. Why didn't they take Dalton Kincaid or Broderick Jones? Well, Billy Mack over here has been absolutely fantastic.
Don't mock me. That was meant to be my. I said it Jackson Smith-Njigba. I didn't say Dalton Kincaid.
Well, I mean, that's a lot of fans have said Smith-Njigba because he was the number one receiver that year. I mean, Zay Flowers would have been good too.
Sure. Yeah, no, Will McDonald's been great.
Schmedberg, Chris left Wisconsin before Tippmann went pro, but he recruited him and developed him. I'll take that.
Yeah. Will McDonald's been great. And you know me, Mike, I have been one of the I don't even want to say like a Will McDonald doubter, because it's never been about the player himself. It's been about the pick and the way that the Jets handled the D-line situation. But right now, it's hard for me to sit here as staunch of a critic as I was for the decision to let Bryce Huff go and have Will McDonald basically take his place. It's hard for me to sit here and still say that they made the wrong decision there, because, and I'm not even going to consider what Bryce Huff is doing in Philly, because it hasn't been great. Now he's hurt.
If you do, it looks even better.
Even if he was still doing well, my take going into the year was you're probably not going to get Bryce Huff production out of Will McDonald, because expecting, a guy to him to just not randomly, but magically become one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, because that's what Bryce Huff was with the Jets. Expecting him to just become that and fill that role was asking a lot. He's kind of done that, Mike. Like he's kind of done it. He is third in sacks through 13 games, 11th in pressures with 45, fifth highest pass rush productivity rating by PFF. The only players with a higher pass rush productivity rating in 2024, Aiden Hutchinson, Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, Micah Parsons. That is about as elite company as you are going to get. Now, I think there are still holes in his game as a run defender. He is at times unplayable in that regard, and I think that is something that will be, I don't know about overlooked going into the offseason, but I think the next regime will have to seriously consider, like, hey, how much can we actually play this guy, because he really is a liability on running downs. But as far as a pure pass rusher goes, he is doing pretty much everything that Bryce Huff did last year for the Jets. He is filling that role as an elite pass rusher. He's not an elite defensive end, but he is an elite pass rusher at this stage. And that's really everything you could have asked for Will McDonald when you drafted him. And I've seen some people throw this out there, and this is kind of, I want to get your take on this, because it's all going to depend on who the Jets bring in and what coaching staff they bring in. Looking at the personnel they have on defense, you could make the argument that they might be better suited for a 3-4 because of a guy like Will McDonald, who I think he might do better as a 3-4 outside linebacker. Jermaine Johnson is the tricky one in there. I'm not sure where he would fit in, but I do think Will McDonald is a little bit miscast as a 4-3 end and could be better as a stand-up edge rusher. And maybe they could still find ways to get him in that role.
Isn't that part of what, because they had Huff standing up a lot in Philly, and he wasn't as good until he started putting his hand in the dirt again.
I don't know. I mean,
is McDonald that similar where,
that would be up to the next.
Do you buy Quinnen as a 3-tech right now? I mean, like a full-time 3-tech?
I think he would thrive as a 3-tech. And now you would need to figure out run defense if you're moving him to 3-tech, because he's your best run defender in the interior. And if you're moving him off 1-tech, which is what he's been playing, I think you're losing some of that run defense, and you have to figure.
You thought the run defense was bad this year.
Yeah, you have to figure some stuff out there, because he's still been a really good 1-tech. But when they drafted him, I thought he could be a 3-tech in the NFL. That was my initial expectation for him.
Well, he wasn't that big. I mean, big. He's 290 pounds. I don't think he was 300 when he got drafted. I mean, he put on weight now in the pros, but
Alabama used him at nose sometimes. Like he was playing everywhere, because when you're that talented as a defensive lineman in college, I mean, Will McDonald was playing 1-tech at Iowa State. Like,
what were they doing? What were they thinking with that?
I don't know, man. Leonard Taylor was playing nose tackle at Miami. He was predominantly playing nose tackle his last year at Miami.
And that's what killed his stock, because he was like a first-round pick when he wasn't doing that last year.
It did.
The year before that.
It'll be interesting to see how the next regime evaluates Will McDonald, but right now I could confidently say he is one of the best pure pass rushers in the NFL, and that is a best-case scenario for his development this season. That is a development scenario that, not that I didn't think was possible, but I didn't think it was likely. But but it's what we've gotten. He is one of the best pure pass rushers in the NFL. Credit to Robert Saleh, credit to Aaron White-Cotton, everyone who's developed him, and credit to Will McDonald as well, because he's a really, really good pass rusher. Still a major work in progress as run defender. I think he's even worse than Bryce Huff in that category, and Huff was not particularly good at that. But in terms of pass rushing, you got it, man. He's great.
I mean, I know there are faults in his game, the run defense, obviously, but if they drafted him knowing that, they drafted him to do this, and that's exactly what he's doing, warts and all. So you can argue with the process of that, but if this is what they wanted, you know who he reminds me of? This is like the high-end comparison. He reminds me a lot of Elvis Dumervil.
Oh, okay.
Smaller guy. Elvis Dumervil was 5'11", a little bigger, but only about 250.
Sure.
Fast guy, led the league in sacks. Had 105 in his career. Not a great run defender. Like one year he had 38 tackles and 17 sacks. That sounds like Will McDonald.
Dumervil also had a really good spin move, if I'm remembering correctly, right?
Yes.
Obviously,
and his middle name is Cool, by the way. Spelled like Kool-Aid with a K.
Is it really?
Elvis Cool Dumervil.
Incredible.
That's an amazing name.
His son is Kool-Aid McKinstry.
I was about to say he's gonna be Elvis Cool Jr. 2 or whatever. That's what I would go with. But we got one more.
Sure.
And it's a guy that I've defended to the hilt because Sauce Gardner over the last 2 years was the best cornerback in football, and this year he's been like the 6th or 7th best, and apparently that's some
I'd say he's
against him.
I've been right there with you defending Sauce. I'd say he's been comfortably a top 15 corner. I don't think I'd say 6th or 7th. I'd say he's 15th-ish range, but this past Sunday, week 13, his best game of the year. And I don't think you need PFF grades to tell you that, but he was PFF's 3rd highest graded cornerback in week 13, 90.1 PFF grade, which, believe it or not, and this actually surprised me when I was looking at his numbers from last year, that is the highest single game grade that he has had since week 7 of his rookie year. He was unbelievable in 2023, like historic numbers in coverage in 2023. He did not have a PFF grade in a single game higher than his grade this past game against Seattle.
Probably just a lot of like 83s, 84s.
Yeah, it was consistently great numbers, but it just wasn't like he didn't have any. I don't think he had any in the 90s last year at all, which was surprising. But yeah, Gardner now ranks 12th among all qualified corners in PFF coverage grade and is top 15 in fewest catches allowed. He's also played more snaps than almost every other cornerback ahead of him. So if you were to go on a per snap basis, it'd be even better. That's considered a down year for Sauce Gardner, which it is. And again, we've had the Sauce Gardner conversation on the show before, so we don't have to go into it again. If his coverage numbers aren't as elite as they were his first 2 years, which we're talking historically elite, the first 2 years, then the other parts of his game that are weaknesses, which are his tackling, which actually has been a little bit better as of late. I know fans haven't discussed it, but it has been a little bit better. He didn't miss a single tackle this past week. I don't know if he missed a tackle the week before that either, which I know baby steps. We're starting small, but he's been a little bit better in that aspect. But it's, that part of the weakness of his game. And then of course the lack of turnovers, the ball skills aren't great. We saw it on that throw to, I believe it was DK in the Seahawks game where it was picture perfect coverage. Like you could not get any better coverage. And it was also an elite throw from Geno Smith.
And DK Metcalf's huge.
And DK's huge, but if Sauce had a little bit more ball skills, maybe he gets a hand on that ball and is able to knock it away. I don't know if he picks it. That's asking a lot because you're not even looking at the ball in that situation, but maybe he's able to get his hands up a little bit more. But again, if his coverage numbers are still top 15, which is what they've been this year, he's still a great player. He's not as valuable as he could be because of the tackling and because of the lack of ball skills, but he's still a great player. And I think a lot of the criticism, as we've been saying for weeks, has been very overblown. And a lot of it is just fans being frustrated with the season and taking it on to Sauce Gardner as a result.
Yeah, like the thing that always got me is nobody on this defense tackles. Nobody does. And yet Sauce gets designated as like the avatar of everything that's wrong with the Jets. Looking at this roster and saying Sauce Gardner is one of the problems on it,
no.
I can't get there. I will never get there.
I think the more nuanced discussion around Sauce is like, hey, what is his contract value? Like that's the nuanced discussion.
Well, he's going to reset the market, clearly.
I agree. And there are some fans that are I don't think most people are not saying he's a problem on the roster. There are some people that are saying that, and they're idiots. I don't want to entertain those people. If you're saying that Sauce Gardner is an actual problem on the roster, you're dumb. If you're saying that Sauce Gardner isn't worth the contract the Jets are to give him, I disagree, but I think that's a genuine conversation that we can have, and we've been having it. He's going to reset the cornerback market. I think it's a fair point to say, look, it's a cornerback who he's a bad tackler. He's one of the worst tacklers among corners in the NFL. He also doesn't have ball skills and doesn't create turnovers. I hate when people say he doesn't make game-changing plays because that's wrong. You don't need to create a turnover to make a game-changing play. It helps. It definitely helps. It gives you another avenue to doing it, but
it's easier to see when it's a game-changing play if you pick the ball off.
It shows up on the box score more, but you can make game-changing plays that are not turnovers. I mean, hell, if you're not getting thrown at, that's a potential game-changing play. If nobody's open, if there's coverage. I went to the game on Sunday, which unfortunately I went to the game. It's a lot easier to see coverage when you're watching at a game, because you're not watching on the broadcast angle. Obviously, it's easy when you have the all-22, but you're basically getting the all-22 in real time. The Jets' coverage in that game was outstanding. There were a number of plays where Geno Smith was scrambling around forever and nobody was open. Those are game-changing plays right there. I mean, Geno Smith scrambling around for 10 seconds, can't find anybody, gets sacked or has to check it down or whatever. That's a game-changing play because the alternative is, Sauce Gardner got beat and he allows a 50, 60-yard catch. That's a game-changing play that doesn't show up on the stat sheet because he's just doing his job, whatever you want to call it. But I do think there's a nuanced discussion to be had around Sauce Gardner. But if anyone is saying like, hey, look, he's just bad, he's not good at football, he's a problem on the roster, there's no reason to entertain those people.
Let's talk Dolphins. Because we have to.
Let's talk about them quick.
Dolphins it's been such a weird season for them because it's so hard to evaluate everything. Like Mike McDaniel doesn't look good this year, but he didn't have his quarterback for half of it. Tua, we don't know what the future is really going to be. It's really tough looking at Miami just because I don't know where they stand in the future. And are they going to be a contending team next year, or is this like it? Were they supposed to go for it this year, and then Tua got hurt, and it all went up in smoke like the Rodgers last year?
They're going to try
because of that. Like across the board, outside of receivers, this just looks like an average team. They have an average offensive line. They have an average defense. They have an average, maybe a little bit above average running game. Tua is an average quarterback. I think they have average coaching staffs. It's a shame that Miami has been this bad because, at the very least, I would have thought that they could have been a challenge to Buffalo if the Jets weren't. After decades plural of the Patriots running everything, it looks like the baton has clearly been passed, and now Buffalo's that team. Even though New England, I think, has a good foundation with Drake May. Amazing how they get it right immediately, and the Jets never get it right. But, I mean, the Bills are now set to run this division for however long. And partially it's just because Miami has not been as good as I thought they would be coming into the year. So the Jets could, in theory, end up winning this game. But they, in theory, should have won like 3 other games just this year. Denver, Buffalo, Seattle. Like, even with everything else, those should have probably been wins. Even Minnesota at the end. And yet here we are.
Yeah, Miami is a football team. That is what I can say about the Dolphins. They are a football team. I like Tua. I think Tua is being maximized in a great offensive scheme for him. If he stays healthy and he's playing under Mike McDaniel for the rest of his career, which he probably won't be, but if he was, I think he's going to put up some really, really good numbers and have a really good career. They also have 2 very good wide receivers in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Can you hear me, Mike? Is this good? Is this
yeah,
right?
Something happened the other day, and your mic is like the gain's all blown out, and I'm getting static here.
We're getting. Oh boy. Okay. Is it? It's still static.
So before the Optimum Monster claims us, you want to make some predictions?
God damn it! Sure. Let's predict.
Dolphins 24, Jets 23. Jets will get some points. They can't execute in close games. Jeff Ulbricht's a 0 as a coach. Tua's going to make enough plays. Jalen Waddle's going to have 1 40-yard catch on Sauce, and they're all going to make fun of him online. I've seen this movie before. It won't be as bad as last year with the pick 6 Hail Mary, but at this point, nothing would surprise me.
I'll say, I don't know. I'll also say Miami win. I'll say 27 Dolphins, 20 Jets. Sure, we'll go with that. I think Miami wins it. I'm blaming Optimum, by the way, for my mic being shit apparently now. This is somehow Optimum as well. And I also, really quick, I know my mic probably sucks right now, but Elijah Campbell revenge game. I always try and look at the revenge games, and this is an Elijah Campbell revenge game for the Dolphins.
Trevor Lawrence out for the year, by the way, too.
I saw that. So. I just saw that.
That was dirty.
Yeah, that was
so
wild, man.
That was wild. Thank you guys for tuning into the Jet Press podcast. You can find us on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. And if you're on YouTube, like the stream and subscribe. Those are 2 ways you can support the show. And subscribe to our membership. 99 cents. You get priority reply in the comments. Justin, I'll save you the trouble of working with faulty equipment here because it actually blew my ears out the first time I heard it. Before we sign off, though, Justin did an interview with Demario Davis, Jets legend, currently on the New Orleans Saints, 5-time All-Pro. That's up on the Jet Press YouTube channel, so go check that out. It's right over in the videos tab instead of the live tab where the podcast are. Click over to videos, and you can find Demario Davis there. But until this Sunday, when we'll do another live stream right after the game, I've been Mike Luciano. That is Justin Fried, and we will see you guys on Sunday.